up quite a bit in this, I think is a very funny side character. But he never makes it so like he doesn't make it like a cartoon or anything like that. He doesn't stray away from the threat that's actually happening. And I think they just lock in with this one much better than the second one. And then, like you said, the preceding ones, because then they really just dive into it's almost like a black comedy, really. Which still again has it here, but yeah. Not as much.
I think so too. I do think that they they do sacrifice taking some of the like teen characters and their feelings about what they're experiencing like a little bit less seriously, which is something I thought was always strong about Scream too, because the Scream movies would get funny and they were practically like Kevin Williamson was basically writing parodies of slasher films, but Wes Craven came in. And he was like, I'm going to direct this like it's the real thing. And the actors are going to, the characters in the world are going to treat it like it's the real thing. And it walks that line well. I do think the balance gets skewed as you get through the movies, and especially when we'll talk about part of it is with the second one is it's sort of like an 80s maximalist action filmmaker kind of takes it over, and so his sense of humor is a little bit different than the first movie, and
the humor almost becomes you know what's interesting is that the humor in the second movie actually becomes more of like the death sequences themselves, whereas this one feels like when the death sequences happen, they're actually more gruesome and sad, and the more comical aspects are them trying to convince all the adults around them that death is going to kill them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I would say like whether depending on what you wanted of these movies, this true. First movie doesn't technically have like a gore gag. The second movie is nothing but gore gags.
Yeah, the second is just a gag after. They even make more characters so that you can have more gags and stuff. Whereas this one, again...
and sorry, and not even just the second one, but like all future installments. Like the third one and the fourth one and the fifth one, like every single one became, how can we do escalating gore gags? Which is, and there's... Trust me when I say there's a lot of unique appeal to that, and we'll talk about it when we get to the second one. There's a lot of stuff I like about that, but there's something I do think that is just a little special about this first one in how, again, it really just locks itself into the premise and into the perspective of people who are figuring this premise out. And none of the other movies have the advantage of doing that because you go into it having already attended a really popular teen horror film and knowing exactly, knowing what the setup is. It's already out of the way. And in this one, they just get to really relish in setting it up, which I think they do a really good job of, for example, in like, the opening sort of premonition prologue that becomes kind of a defining staple of the franchise, where we sit through the slow buildup and eventual explosion of a gruesome disaster sequence designed to introduce us to and then essentially kill every major cast member of the movie almost before the movie has even started. And then obviously reveal that to be a dream or some sort of vision that the main protagonist has, and then works to prevent and initiates the cycle of each one being killed off by death in the order that they were originally meant to be killed during the disaster. And it encourages you to really pay attention to the movie because you do have to go, oh yeah, what order logistically did each one kind of die in, and which detail in that sequence is going to apply to their future death, and is death going to get some sort of ironic comeuppance or all this kind of stuff. And obviously each subsequent sequel in some way or another was tasked with coming up with and creatively one-upping the disaster of the previous film in some ones. And obviously later ones include like a roller coaster derailment and a racetrack accident and a bridge collapse. And we'll talk about the highway pileup in 2, which is arguably maybe even the best one.
Yeah.
But the first one is as I mentioned at the top of the segment, it's an airplane mechanical malfunction explosion that's one seen through the eyes of the high schooler Alex, played by Devon Sawa. I did think it's funny his name is Alex Browning, because for whatever reason they decided every character name in all of these movies is going to be related to some sort of like old horror director or old director, and so this one's obviously named after Todd Browning of Dracula and Freaks fame. But Sawa, I think, is quite good in the film, and is the early sequence is all just pure anxiety about heading on his senior school trip to Paris out of JFK, and all of the filmmaking is like, here's a haunting close-up of a bedroom fan, and here's wind blowing into his room in the middle of the night, and the flickering bedroom clock transitioning into these loud airport sounds, and the camera operating essentially as this voyeuristic unseen presence, like a ghost who's already, or maybe not even a ghost, but like a predator who's already like eyeing its
On
sort
the
of
move.
target.
And
Yeah,
I love
it's
how
got it in its sights.
and I love too, like it's got the, you know, the wind is just kind of blowing through the room, and then it's moving certain objects, and then eventually it goes onto like a history book, and it starts flipping through the pages and lands on executions, and you're just like, that's fantastic foreshadowing right there. It's, I mean, it's so on the nose, but it's just perfect.
Yeah. And well, and obviously each sequence is also tasked very quickly with being like, here is the social ecosystem of like this ensemble who are going to go through these death sequences. And it's, you know, it's, you could say it's sort of like teen movie-ish or slasher movie-ish, where it just kind of goes, you know, here's the social standing of, you know, here's Todd, who's played by Chad Danella, who's Alex's like goofy best friend, or here's Claire, played by Ali Larder, who is the, you know, the one sort of like smart and kind girl who we know is smart because she speaks French and reads Henry Miller and believes Alex about his vision, or Carter, played by Kerr Smith, who is like sort of jock bully, and then Terry, who is like Carter's like blonde girlfriend. My one of my favorite character names, Valerie Luton, or Val Luton, who is their adult chaperone. And then Billy Hitchcock. It's funny that Sean William Scott plays a man named Billy Hitchcock, who seems like a nice dude, but like sort of dumb, and has a sick, which I need to own, a custom New York Rangers.